I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction just to ground all of us. And I apologize to my two speakers because they really are the focus of this. But I think for all of us to have just a little bit of a point of reference. So let me go ahead and talk about we're going to talk about the history of nuclear energy very briefly. We're going to talk about the nuclear energy production on a global basis, and then we're going to take a quick look at U.S. nuclear. So let's take a look at the history of nuclear. Now, of course, it started in 1942 when they built the Chicago pile. And of course, this in 1953, seminal time when President Eisenhower gave the Atoms for Peace speech. If you think about it, it is still the policy framework for America. There's danger in nuclear and there's great promise in nuclear, and we have to find a way to bring these together and to reconcile them and have a policy framework that makes that work. I would argue, and we'll go through this today, that probably still is a dominating landmark for all of us. So now as we go down, we see it was in 1957 when the Price-Anderson Act was passed. Now people, probably this audience knows Price-Anderson, but most of Americans don't have a clue what Price-Anderson is. It is the foundation where we made it possible for nuclear energy because we established a government framework for liability. And I would argue it's one of the most powerful things that still shapes the effectiveness of this industry. Something, frankly, that we've been trying to encourage Japan. They need a Price-Anderson Act. Okay, let's just march a little bit further in time. Of course, back in 1968, to just give you a sense of where we were scale-wise, past the Non-Proliferation Treaty in '69. And then if you look at 1974, that's the last time we approved a power plant, 1974. It wasn't when we were building them, but it was the last time that one was approved, and the reason for that, of course, is we had 3 Mile Island in 1979. Now, as we go down in time, now obviously that reshaped the landscape. We passed a number of pieces of legislation. 1985, INPO was created, very important. And INPO is the driving force of efficiency in American nuclear power production. And Mayo is the head of INPO. INPO has an executive secretariat down in Atlanta, but they elect from among their midst a senior leader, and Mayo is here, and he's here in that capacity, that he's with us today. He's also the co-chair with Brent of our commission. You see we hit the high water mark in 1990 for commercial nuclear power plants. We authorized Yucca, and I will show you soon we deauthorized Yucca. 2005, of course, is when we put in place this landscape for the so-called nuclear renaissance. And very important, it's been a little bit slow on the uptake. We saw it, but in 2007 is when we started seeing new licenses being submitted. And of course, the NRC had in many ways sort of collapsed and had to be rebuilt. So that's been part of this process that's going on now. And then as we go down in time, Yucca was terminated. And then, of course, in 2011, Fukushima. So we've just got a brief review. Let me take a look quickly at the global nuclear energy production. I think it's interesting to see this. And what I'm going to do is to show you, just to orient you on this, the x-axis, the horizontal bar, this is the percent of nuclear inside these countries, and the y-axis is the amount of energy production in the country. And what I'm going to do is to track various parts around the globe to give you a sense of what production is like. And now you can see where we are. Okay, we're going to go out to about 2010 here and stop for a second. This was the landscape pre-Fukushima, and you see as a percent of nuclear, Europe was the largest, largely led by the French. The United States, you see, we're 20%. 20% of our electricity production is coming from nuclear power in America. And what you see, you may have seen the Asia thing moving a little bit, and it went over, and it was closer to 14%, and by 2010 it's actually moved back, so it's about 8%. The reason for that is China has been building so much commercial non-nuclear plants. It isn't that the raw numbers of nuclear plants have gone down, it's that the percentage against the economy has gone down. But now I want you to see what happens. We're going out into the future. Okay, so we're 2030. If you will have noticed, Europe slipped to the left. And that reflects both Germany and Belgium and Switzerland saying they're not going to do nuclear anymore. They're going to start phasing out of nuclear. You see the United States is still fairly static. It's drifted a little bit. It's closer to 19% by 2030. But you see this skyrocketing performance of Asia. And it's because you're seeing dramatic increases in the production of nuclear power in China. Okay, let's take a look at just the reactor fleets, just to give you a sense of this on a national basis. And if we're looking here, the y-axis is just simply numbers of reactors. And the x-axis doesn't mean anything. It's simply a way to spatially differentiate the countries. But just let's look at the pace of time of what's happening. Watch China's rise, Japan's decline, and this is in 2000. Now, we haven't seen anything yet happen for the United States, but now watch. And this is simply looking at retirement schedules for nuclear power plants. We only took it out to 2030. So now, let me take a closer look now to the US nuclear energy production. This is, these are demography charts we've taken from population economists, and I'm going to show you the demography profile of the nuclear power fleet. And these are numbers of reactors in each column. So if you look at the light green, it's 25 to 29 reactors that are in the age group, 25 years old to 29 years old. There are 30 reactors in that category. We're going to just watch to see what happens to our current, and this is by current investment plans. You don't see anything on the left. We're getting out of the nuclear power business. Now, one last look at this. And this is, again, I'm looking at the numbers of reactors that we have, and again, the x-axis is meaningless because it simply differentiates so that we can show. This is states in the United States where we have nuclear reactors. We have roughly 104 nuclear reactors, and we're going to watch the clock. Georgia's going up a little bit because we still have production coming online. That is what we're looking at.